Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Stacy Van Dyke, and we start with the latest in our Valley Flood Watch. Temporary levees are finished in Valley City. Once they're inspected by the Army Corps of Engineers, the flow from the Bald Hill Dam will be increased to allow 17 feet through town. The river in Valley City is currently around 16 feet, but with more precipitation forecast later this week, officials are keeping a close eye on things. The pizza shop in Mayville remains dry today. They're hoping to open on Thursday, but they're also watching to see what this weekend's weather system could bring. In Grand Forks, the National Weather Service has lowered the flood forecast to 46 feet, which is about where the river is now. The city says the English Coulee pump station has pumped 133 million gallons of water so far. Well, the uncertainty of a flood is stressful, oftentimes scary, but sometimes amazing. Take a look at this video shared with us from the Oslo area.
What is that? A whirlpool! That's the biggest whirlpool I've never seen!
Let's head over to Hutch now with the latest on what's been a whirlwind of a forecast lately. Hutch?
That little Levi was sure excited to see that, and even though it's been a battle indeed for many areas, sometimes Mother Nature does provide some interesting scenes. Here's a look at the bottom line, and we want to point this out. First and foremost, we have moderate to major flooding taking place at many of our river locations. The battle continues all week as the waters in many spots will begin to fall. But more rain is in the forecast, as we've been telling you about, Friday through Sunday. And there indeed will be a chance at second crests for many areas. It depends on where the rain falls and how much. And what we're looking for, areas that receive particularly widespread area, 2 or more inches of rain, that's going to equal bad news for those specific areas in the watersheds that the rain falls in. Check this out at Oslo, north of the Grand Forks area, how high the river stays in that major flood category all week into next week. This is Sunday and Monday. And now in Crookston, the battle has continued, but we are about to cross that threshold into the red area here. That's a moderate flood stage. This is fantastic news. The more it can fall before we get more rain in the forecast, the better, because our forecasts may, depending on where the rain falls, do something like this. This is what a second crest might look like. Will there be a second crest? How high will it be? Will it be higher than this crest that we had from last week's rain? It all depends on how much and exactly where this weekend's rain falls. A quick snapshot shows in yellow and orange where the best chance at rain between 1 inch and 2 or more could fall. A little lower chance down in the Southern Valley, but if this pans out, that would not necessarily be good news for the northern Red River Valley. Other models, the European model, shows a subtle difference in this. We'll keep you posted. Friday, Saturday, first alert weather days for that potential for heavy rain and the impactful flooding. We'll keep you on top of everything and let you know what to expect. But for tonight, we get to expect some more peace and some more quiet. Temperatures that will be in those upper 30s briefly, falling quickly into the 20s. Once again, it looks warmer, and another day of quiet weather for most tomorrow. Stacy, I'll have hour-by-hour details, and we'll look in more detail on that weekend winter event out west again here in a minute.
Yeah, just a lot riding on that forecast, isn't there? Thanks.
There really is.
Well, the White House is taking steps to make a pill for treating COVID available to millions more Americans. Currently, Pfizer's free antiviral treatment is available at about 20,000 sites around the country, but the Biden administration has a goal of doubling that within weeks by allowing pharmacies to order it directly from the federal government.
We need to focus on making sure that everybody who is eligible knows they're eligible and they can gain access to it, because it is very effective in treating COVID.
At this point, the FDA has only authorized the drug for use by those 12 and older who have a high risk of developing severe COVID. Vice President Kamala Harris tested positive for COVID today. The White House says Harris has exhibited no symptoms. She'll continue to work remotely and will only return to the White House once she tests negative for the virus. The White House said neither President Biden nor First Lady Jill Biden are considered a close contact. A puzzling outbreak of sudden liver disease in nearly 200 children has health authorities in Europe and the U.S. racing to find answers. At least one child has died and several others have required liver transplants. The illnesses have no known connection, although a possible link with a virus that can cause colds is being investigated. The CDC said in a nationwide health alert last week that the first U.S. cases were identified in October in Alabama. Cases have also been found in Illinois and North Carolina. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments regarding the Biden administration's push to end his predecessor's so-called Remain in Mexico policy. It requires migrants to stay outside the U.S. while their asylum claims are decided. Meanwhile, a separate legal fight is underway over the pandemic rule known as Title 42. That gives immigration officials the authority to turn away migrants at the border over public health concerns. Natalie Brand reports from Capitol Hill, where federal lawmakers are now weighing in.
A key immigration policy under former President Trump returned before the Supreme Court Tuesday.
Safe, not stranded.
The Biden administration is arguing they have a right to end what's been called the Remain in Mexico policy, requiring migrants at the southern border to wait outside of the United States while their asylum claims are heard.
DHS detains tens of thousands of individuals on any given day. Respondents' interpretation that would remove any discretion would mean that DHS can't take account of that limited capacity in making prioritization decisions.
Texas and Missouri sued to keep the program in place, arguing that ending it would violate federal immigration law passed by Congress.
The Biden administration, just like the rest of us, have to follow federal law. They either have to detain them or send them back to their country of origins.
Meanwhile, a separate legal battle is underway over Title 42, which allows border officers to turn away most migrants seeking asylum because of the COVID-19 pandemic. President Biden wants to wind down Title 42 next month, though a Louisiana federal judge has said he'll temporarily block that, siding with a Republican-led challenge.
We'll have a temporary restraining order that gets us to May 13th. May 13th will be the hearing on the preliminary order that we hope to obtain as well.
On Capitol Hill, opposition to the administration's push to end Title 42 has some bipartisan support.
With the health crisis, we can't take any more chance of people coming undocumented and unchecked.
Some Republican lawmakers have called for a Title 42 amendment to be added to any attempt to pass additional COVID-19 aid. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
In a memo released today, the Department of Homeland Security acknowledges it anticipates an increase in migration levels once Title 42 is lifted. Minnesota Republican senators passed a public safety bill featuring provisions that are very different from Democrats' ideas on how to tackle crime. The bill includes about $100 million aimed at recruiting and retaining more officers and harsher penalties for crimes like carjacking. Democrats say the package doesn't include enough money. House Democrats' public safety package includes an additional $50 million in funding. Democratic Governor Tim Walz's own proposal would give $300 million in grants to local governments. Russian forces continue to pound railway facilities in Ukraine in an attempt to disrupt the flow of weapons into the country. The U.S. and NATO allies stand firm on the commitment to support Ukraine in the war, but Russian officials now say weapons from the West are diminishing the possibility of peace. Skylar Henry has the latest.
Firefighters battled a blaze at this railway substation in southwestern Ukraine. A nearby railway bridge that connects the region to Romania was also hit. Russia says it's using high-precision missiles to destroy facilities being used to deliver foreign weapons to Ukraine fighters. But Ukrainian officials say Russian missiles also flew at low altitude over Europe's largest nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine. Russia's also ramped up its bombardment in the east, including Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv. This shell-shocked 94-year-old woman asks, is the war over? Already sensing the answer is no. In Moscow, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres met with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Guterres also met with Russia's foreign minister, who'd earlier raised the possibility that Russia could use nuclear weapons in the future.
Here in Washington, Secretary of State Antony Blinken appeared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to announce U.S. diplomats will return to Ukraine this week. He also asked Congress to approve more funding for more weapons to Ukraine.
Fully funding it is critical, in my judgment, to ensuring that Russia's war in Ukraine is a strategic failure for the Kremlin and serves as a powerful lesson to those who might consider following its path.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Germany coordinating with more than 40 allies on how to keep the weapons flowing into Ukraine. Germany, which so far has avoided sending heavy weapons to assist in the war, announced it will now send in armored anti-aircraft vehicles. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
The UN Refugee Agency is expecting more than 8 million people to flee Ukraine this year. A Minnesota judge has ruled that the trial of 3 fired Minneapolis police officers charged with aiding and abetting George Floyd's killing will not be live streamed. The judge had cited the threat of COVID-19 to allow live streaming of last year's murder trial of Derek Chauvin in Floyd's death, but now he said the health threat has receded and he cannot override the other 3 officers' objections to live audiovisual coverage. The 3 were convicted in federal court in February of violating Floyd's civil rights. Prosecutors and a coalition of media organizations argued for allowing live coverage again, but the judge said he's bound by Minnesota's normal court rules, which allow cameras during most of a trial only if all parties consent. Now, the attorney representing Derek Chauvin has filed an appeal for a new trial in the murder of George Floyd. In an 82-page brief, his attorney argued that pre-trial publicity, the threat of further rioting, and several other reasons made for an unfair trial. Chauvin's attorney also argues that jurors were not sequestered as unrest followed the death of Daunte Wright during the last week of the trial. Chauvin was convicted of murder and manslaughter in Floyd's death last April. He was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison and is currently being held in Minnesota's only maximum security prison, Oak Park Heights.